It always amazes me when I'm doing research for my videos, when I come across stories, terrible, tragic stories, and I've never ever heard about these things. So here are 3 terrible stories that I found out about recently whilst doing research for my videos. As always, bonus material will be available for my Patreons over on my Patreon page. Number 1. The Movement for the Restoration of the Ten Commandments of God. The Movement for the Restoration of the Ten Commandments of God was a religious group based in southwest Uganda. Founded in the late 1980s and lasting until the year 2000, this mostly self-sufficient commune was characterised by an ascetic lifestyle and strict adherence to the Ten Commandments as laid out in the Bible. Nestled in a lush green valley surrounded by small homesteads and banana plantations, it looked like paradise on earth. The leaders of the group were kind of a bit of an odd couple. I apologise in advance for my terrible pronunciation, I'll try my best. The de facto leader was a man called Joseph Kibwetiri, and not much is known about him other than that he was, for most of his adult life anyway, reasonably wealthy teacher, piously Catholic, and he was well respected in the local community. During the mid-1980s, it's reported that he saw visions of the Virgin Mary, and subsequently decided to set his life on a new course to spread the word of God. By 1989, he had met Credonia Murinde, a former prostitute and brewer of banana beer who had vowed to change her sinful ways. She told Kibwetiri of a sacred rock in the mountains that resembled the Virgin Mary, and, convincing him of her own visions of the Madonna, the two of them pooled their combined wealth to form the new movement in 1989. Uganda had been a country plagued by strife for years, and so a simple commune existence in a lush green valley with a nearby waterfall must have been very appealing to those seeking solace in a troubled world. Members were asked to sell their worldly goods and to pool their funds into the communal pot to keep the group going. By 1991, the group had over 200 members and was growing. Although the group adopted a somewhat austere lifestyle, there were days where everyone remained silent and there were also enforced days of fasting. The commune seemingly thrived and was growing each year. Throughout the 1990s, the movement expanded and purchased multiple properties, including an old church. The group now reportedly boasted over 5,000 members, and leaders Joseph Kibwetiri and Credonia Murinde had a loyal group of close followers that were dubbed the Apostles. These were followers who would undertake any order given by the leaders. Due to the numerous donations from the growing members, the group leaders became rich and bought up houses, farms and cars. However, there was trouble in paradise. In the years leading up to the new millennium, Kibwetiri and Murinde had assured the commune members that the return of Christ was imminent. In fact, he would appear on January 1st of the year 2000, and that only the faithful would be saved. There was no time to waste. Sins must be confessed, worldly goods disposed of, and preparations made for the coming rapture. Now, when January the 1st, 2000 passed with no reappearance of Jesus nor the end of the world, there were mutterings of discontent within the rank and file. People felt deceived, and many said that they wanted their money back. With donations dwindling and followers leaving, Kibwetiri quickly settled on a new date. It was actually the 17th of March. He'd just made a slight miscalculation, that was all. On the big day, there was to be a celebration. 3 bulls had been slaughtered and roasted for the feast, and 70 crates of soft drinks had been brought in. The party was to be held over 2 days inside the old church. A festive atmosphere must have reigned as over 500 members, many of them women and children, packed into the old church for the party. If anybody noticed the boarded over windows, well, no one thought anything suspicious of it. Minutes after the party guests arrived, the doors were barred from the outside and the church was set on fire. With the doors barred and the windows boarded shut, there was no escape. Local villagers saw smoke coming from the commune and then heard a huge explosion. The local police were alerted and arrived to investigate. in the charred ruins of the old church, 530 people had perished. At first, it was assumed that this was an act of self-inflicted religious fervour, but as police discovered 6 more bodies buried in the cesspit and a further 153 bodies buried at a nearby farmhouse, it started to look a lot more like murder. Police began searching all the sites that the group leaders and head apostles owned. They found 81 bodies at head apostle Joseph Nirmurinda's farm, and a further 155 bodies at Dominic Kataribabu's estate. All appeared to have been either poisoned, stabbed, or strangled. Along with the church victims, a reported total of 924 men, women, and children had been murdered. As for the leaders Joseph Kibwitiri and Credonia Murinde and their top apostles, Ursula Kumungani, Joseph Nimurindea, and Dominic Kataribabu, their whereabouts remain unknown. It appears that they did not die in the fire, and they presumably escaped. The official story is that far from being true believers, the leaders were really tricksters and con artists in it purely for the money and the power. As of May 2024, they remain fugitives at large, and so far, to my knowledge, no one has ever been arrested or prosecuted for one of the worst examples of mass murder in modern times. Number 2. The South Korean humidifier scandal. When 38-year-old An Song-woo bought a bottle of liquid sterilizer for his humidifier at home, he thought he was creating a healthy environment for his wife, who was pregnant with their second child. Little did he know that that seemingly innocuous purchase would bring utter tragedy to his family. A few months later, in February 2011, An's wife developed a sudden breathing problem. She was taken to the nearest hospital, but the diagnosis was grim. Her lungs had been completely destroyed. She and her unborn baby both died within a matter of days. An's son, who survived, was diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis. Humidifier sterilizers, designed to reduce the formation of mold or bacteria in the water deposits of household humidifiers, had first been introduced back during the 1990s. The use of these humidifiers in South Korea is widespread, with many families using them during the night, especially in children's bedrooms. British company Reckitt Benckiser, the multinational behemoth that owns brands like Dettol, Strepsils, Durex condoms and French's mustard, just to name a few, well, they produced a sanitizer of their own that was branded Oxy Sac Sac. This product was first released to the market in 2001. The first signs that something was very wrong appeared around 2003 when unexplained cases of interstitial lung disease, that's where the lungs are damaged and scarred, they began appearing in hospitals in the Korean capital Seoul. However, no immediate cause was identified and the deadly sterilizer remained on sale. By 2006, urgent answers were being sought as an epidemic of chronic lung disease was sweeping the city. The statistics were terrifying. 70% of affected children under the age of 10 either died or required lung transplants. For adults, the number was lower, but still significant at around 55%. By 2011, the scandal could be ignored no longer. The Korean government ordered the banning and recall of hundreds of thousands of bottles of sterilizer, and an investigation was ordered. The report concluded that primarily 2 chemicals, PHMG and CMIT, were to blame. These chemicals, which were already present in many shampoos and other household products, are completely harmless if they come into contact with your skin, or even if you accidentally ingest it. But if inhaled as a vapour, then it's a different story. Then those chemicals are deadly. As the news broke, anger erupted and the top brass of Reckitt Benckiser and Oxy were right in the crosshairs of outraged family members. After years of Reckitt Benckiser dodging the issue, it became clear that oxysaxac was indeed a killer. Asian CEO Atuhaire Safdar held a press conference to apologise and lay out promises of compensation, but the families of the victims were incensed.
Can I jump in? We want someone from the senior management of the UK headquarters.
Despite the proffered apology, criminal charges were looming. It seems that Oxy executives had tried to distance themselves from the scandal by paying a couple of crooked academics to write scientific papers which sought to prove that the sanitizers were in fact harmless. In fact, it turned out that not only were they deadly, they had never even undergone any rigorous testing procedures before being launched to the public. In 2016, Shin Hyun-woo, Oxy chief from 1991 to 2005, was found guilty of accidental homicide and false advertising because the product had been promoted as being safe, even for children. He was jailed for 7 years, and that's the maximum prison term that the court could issue. Prosecutors also sought conviction for John Lee, who was the CEO of Oxy Korea from 2005 to 2010, when sales of Sac were at their highest. However, Lee, who now runs Google Korea, managed to avoid prosecution by convincing authorities that he had no knowledge about the dangers of the sterilizer. The first news reports of the Oxy scandal put the death toll at around 100, with maybe 500 more unfortunate souls suffering lung damage. Subsequent findings upped this number to around 2,000 deaths and around maybe 10,000 injured. The latest figure to be reported is that somewhere around 14 to 16,000 people are thought to have died as a result of inhaling oxysaxac, and over 600,000 people have suffered irreversible lung damage. With the majority of cases being reported only in the Korean capital Seoul, you could be forgiven for thinking that this terrible number is itself a vast understatement, as this killer sanitizer was sold all over South Korea, and cases in rural areas remain mostly unreported. Number 3. The Vargas mudslides. The Vargas disaster occurred on the 15th of December 1999, when torrential rainfall caused the collapse of several hillsides in the Vargas coastal area of Venezuela. The region in which the disaster occurred is characterised by steeply sided mountains and hills which abut directly to a narrow coastal strip. Now, the zone is no stranger to rockfalls and mudslides. These have been recorded there since the time of the Spanish conquistadors. The last major mudslide had been as recent as 1951, but in the intervening 48 years, a lot had changed. As the population of Venezuela increased, so naturally the demand for housing increased as well. In Vargas, the narrow coastal strip was the obvious choice for settlements to spring up, and so many new small towns had formed along the base of the mountain chain. Much of the building was unlicensed and of questionable quality, and crammed into these newly formed towns were hundreds of thousands of people, men, women and children living under the shadow of the looming hills behind them, families who, unbeknownst to them, were living on borrowed time. At the start of December 1999, the Vargas region was hit by a severe tropical weather system which brought day after day of torrential rain. For around 2 weeks, the coastal strip and the mountain range behind, the Cordillera de la Costa Central, were soaked day and night by incessant rainfall. As the ground became saturated, the uppermost layer of topsoil became increasingly unstable. Between the nights of the 13th, 14th and 15th of December, it's estimated that the area received around 40 inches of rain. That's like a whole year's worth of rain falling in just under 72 hours. On top of an already saturated layer of topsoil, it was just too much. All along the coast, hillsides gave way, and massive mudslides thundered down the valleys and gorges, wiping out the coastal settlements. Rainfall culverts and emergency runoff channels were completely overwhelmed by the volume of material which came down from the mountains. Geologists estimate that around 1.9 million cubic metres of rock, mud and water poured down from the mountains, travelling at around 50 kilometres an hour. Massive boulders weighing tens of tons smashed through villages and towns, destroying everything in their path. Hundreds of buildings were buried under metres of mud which sat like concrete once it stopped flowing. Some smaller settlements just simply disappeared. They were just swept out to sea and completely destroyed. The death toll for the Vargas disaster has a conservative figure of 30,000 people killed. With little in the way of census data or accurate housing information, some, including the Red Cross, have estimated the actual number to be more like 50,000 fatalities. Only about 1,000 bodies were recovered, the rest were either buried under tons of mud or swept out to sea. Offers of relief poured in from around the world, but as always, politics got in the way. The socialist president, Hugo Chavez, refused the American aid and instead relied on International Red Cross and Cuba to provide the teams of rescue workers and shelter for an estimated 450,000 homeless survivors. Roads and bridges had been completely destroyed, and traumatised survivors had to wade around in thick mud with debris and bodies for days afterwards. 28-year-old Mirabel Milano recalled what it was like. "You don't know the pain I feel. A lot of babies died. I saw pieces of bodies. I saw dead bodies and I had to walk between them. That's not something I can forget about. I cry when I hear the story of another family affected by the mud." And tragedies like this can often bring out the best in humanity, as people risk their own lives to save complete strangers. But in this case, the truly remarkable story of heroism was not carried out by a person, but a dog. This Rottweiler, Orion, is the holder of the world record for the most lives saved by an animal. On the night of the tragedy, Orion saved at least 37 people from drowning, repeatedly entering the debris-choked waters to bring people to shore. Working non-stop through the night and without rest, Orion swam out time and time again, pulling trapped survivors to safety. 37 people, ranging from an 8-year-old girl to an 80-year-old man, were saved by Orion's efforts. The Venezuelan government awarded him the honour for valour, and Orion became a true national hero. Thanks for watching.